Was I ever enough? Part 1. The Past and First Meeting. The city of Mumbai never sleeps. Its lights glitter like scattered stars, its streets hum with 1,000 stories. And yet, for Vivan, one memory always shone brighter than all the city lights combined. Myra. He first met her on a monsoon-soaked evening, the sky bruised with dark clouds and the streets slick with rain. Vivan had been rushing to meet a friend at a quiet cafe tucked in the heart of Bandra when a sudden collision almost knocked him off his feet. Books scattered, coffee cups wobbled, and then, there she was, kneeling to gather the pages he had dropped. I'm so sorry, she said, laughter mingling with embarrassment. Vivan could barely speak. There was something in her eyes, a spark, a kind of unspoken curiosity, like the world was too small for both their stories, yet large enough to contain them together. Don't worry. It's fine, he stammered, fumbling to pick up the last of his scattered notes. That brief encounter planted the seed of a connection neither of them realized would grow into a love that would leave scars neither could forget. The beginning of everything. Days turned into weeks. Their accidental meetings became intentional ones. Cafes became their sanctuaries. Late-night walks along Marine Drive became their sacred ritual. Vivan was quiet, introspective, someone who measured his words with care. Myra, on the other hand, was fire and motion. She laughed loud enough to make strangers glance, her presence impossible to ignore. You think too much, Vivan, she teased one evening, tossing a pebble into the sea. Just feel. Just live, and you think too little, he shot back, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Sometimes feeling without thinking leads to chaos. And yet, the chaos drew them closer. Their differences didn't repel, they complemented. The quiet and the storm, the measured and the impulsive, entwined to create something beautiful, something dangerous in its intensity. Falling in. The months that followed were a blur of emotions. Vivan learned Myra's favourite books, her childhood dreams, the songs that made her heart soar. Myra discovered Vivan's secret fears, his hidden passions, the art he never showed anyone. One night, under the soft glow of a street lamp, Myra turned to him, eyes shimmering. Vivan. Do you ever think about the future? He paused. All the time. But I don't know if I can imagine it without you. Her hand found his, fingers intertwining. Then don't. Just promise me we'll keep today as ours. No expectations. No limits. It was a promise that felt eternal in that moment. A promise that, unbeknownst to both, the future would challenge in ways they couldn't imagine. The first rift. Life, as it often does, began its slow erosion of perfection. Myra's ambitions pulled her toward a new city, a new career, a life brimming with opportunities Vivan could not yet match. At first, he encouraged her. Go chase your dreams, he told her one evening, smiling, though a storm brewed quietly inside. But as the days turned into weeks, the calls became shorter. The laughter shared across screens felt thinner. Vivan's heart tightened with every message that didn't reach him on time, every delayed reply, every absence in her stories of daily life. And slowly, a seed of doubt planted itself. Was he enough for her? Was he enough to hold her love? The break. The argument began as a small disagreement, a trivial remark about priorities. But beneath the words lay months of unspoken fears, quiet resentment, and the haunting question neither wanted to admit. Myra. Maybe I can't do this, Vivan said, voice tight. Maybe I was never enough for you. She froze, eyes wide. Vivan? Don't say that. I just need space. I didn't want to hurt you, but the damage was done. That night, they parted, not with hatred, but with a heavy sorrow that lingered like the scent of rain on wet streets, familiar, inescapable, haunting. Years apart. Time moved on. Vivan buried himself in work, in friends, in fleeting distractions. Myra chased her dreams across cities, across borders, her life full, her heart quiet. Yet, in quiet moments, both found themselves haunted by the same question. Was I ever enough? Was I ever enough? Part 2. Years later. The reunion and emotional turmoil. Years had passed since that rainy evening, since the argument that tore Vivan and Myra apart. Mumbai had changed and so had they. The city's streets were still bustling, still alive with stories. But for Vivan, the hum of the crowd could not drown the memories that lingered. He had built a life that looked whole from the outside, a steady job, friends who laughed at his jokes, a routine that promised stability. Yet, beneath the surface, a quiet emptiness gnawed at him. He tried to tell himself it was fine, that he had moved on, but every familiar cafe, every late-night call to a friend, every song on the radio whispered her name. And then, fate, unpredictable and cruel in its precision, decided to intervene. It was a regular Wednesday morning, the kind of morning where the city had not yet fully awakened, but the air was already heavy with the scent of spices and diesel. Vivan walked into the same cafe he had once frequented with Myra, seeking the comfort of routine. He noticed her before he recognized her. The familiar laughter, soft and melodic, weaving through the hum of conversation. His heart skipped a beat, and for a moment the years melted away. There she was. Myra. The same fire tempered now by time and experience, yet unmistakably her. She looked up, and their eyes met. The world around them seemed to pause. The clatter of cups, the chatter of patrons, the distant honking of cars, all faded into a blur. Vivan's first instinct was to flee, to run away and pretend this never happened. But something held him in place. Maybe it was the desire for closure. Maybe it was the hope that some part of the past could still be reclaimed. Myra approached, her steps measured but steady. "Vivan," she said softly, her voice a mixture of surprise, hesitation, and something unspoken. "Myra," he replied, his own voice trembling with a mix of fear and longing, the awkward beginning. Their first conversation was tentative. Small talk about work, friends, the city, a careful dance around the emotions they both feared to confront. Vivan noticed the subtle changes in her, the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled, the quiet confidence in her posture, the rhythm of her speech that spoke of someone who had faced the world alone and emerged stronger. Yet, beneath the surface, he sensed the same vulnerability he had once known so intimately. "Do you think about us?" Myra asked, almost reluctantly, as they sat across from each other, a steaming cup of coffee between them. Vivan paused, staring at the foam rising in his cup. "Every day," he admitted finally, "every day I try not to, but I can't. The memories. They never left." She nodded, her fingers brushing the rim of her cup. "I feel the same way. I thought I could move on, but some things don't just fade." The weight of regret. Hours passed as they spoke, cautiously peeling back layers of the past. Vivan confessed his insecurities, the fear that he had never been enough, the pain of believing he had lost her forever. Myra listened, her own eyes glistening. She admitted her fear, her choices, and the decisions that had driven them apart. "I left because I didn't know how to be with you and chase my dreams at the same time," she said. "I thought I was protecting both of us, but maybe I was just running from my own fear." The honesty between them was raw, unpolished, and yet healing. The tension that had lingered for years began to shift, as if acknowledging the truth could somehow ease the old wounds, rekindling old emotions. As the conversation deepened, memories surfaced. Their walks along Marine Drive, the rainy evenings, the stolen glances, the laughter and the arguments. Each memory carried a pang of longing, but also a warmth that neither had anticipated. Vivan realized how much he had missed her, not just as a lover but as a companion, a confidant, a part of himself he had lost. Myra too felt the pull of a connection that had never truly vanished. They laughed, hesitated, and sometimes sat in silence, the unspoken understanding growing between them. The past was still present, not as a burden, but as a bridge. Fragile, yet strong enough to support a tentative reconnection. The turning point. The pivotal moment came as evening approached. The city bathed in the golden glow of sunset. They stepped outside, walking along the quiet streets, memories mingling with the present. Vivan stopped, turning to face her. "I've spent years asking myself if I was ever enough for you," he said, voice steady but soft. "And now I realize I don't want to ask anymore. I just want to know if we can try again, even if it's slow, even if it's uncertain." Myra looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mixture of hope and fear. "I've thought about this too," she admitted. "I've wondered if the love we had can exist again, if we can rebuild without letting the past define us." And in that moment, they shared a silent understanding. The past had left scars, yes, but scars could also be a map, guiding them towards something new, something real. Was I ever enough? Part 3. Confrontation, Confession, and Hopeful Reconciliation. The streets of Mumbai had cooled under a gentle evening breeze, but the air between Vivan and Myra crackled with the weight of unsaid words. They walked side by side, neither rushing, neither turning away, as though the city itself had slowed to let them untangle the knots of their past. Finally, Vivan stopped on a quiet street corner. Neon lights flickered softly, casting shadows on their faces. He looked at her, really looked, past the years, past the mistakes, past the fear, and saw her entirely, just as she had always been in the deepest chambers of his memory. "Vivan, why did we let it end like that?" Myra's voice was fragile, almost trembling. "Why did we let fear and doubt tear us apart?" He inhaled deeply, the words forming slowly. "I don't know if I can ever give you the answer that satisfies either of us. Maybe. Maybe we were both too scared, too stubborn, too afraid of admitting that we needed each other more than we feared losing ourselves." Her eyes glimmered with tears, yet there was no anger there, only recognition. "I thought leaving you was the strongest thing I could do," she confessed. "But now, I see that it wasn't strength." It was fear. Vivan reached out, hesitating for a heartbeat before taking her hand. "Fear has a way of keeping people apart," he said softly. "But love has a way of reminding us that the heart remembers what the mind tries to forget." The confession. They stopped walking, standing under the muted glow of a street lamp. The city hummed around them, distant voices and car horns blending into a soft symphony. It felt intimate, as though they were alone in a world that had once kept them apart. Vivan spoke first, voice low and steady. "I've carried a question for years, Myra. A question that haunted every decision, every relationship, every quiet moment. And that question was I ever enough for you?" Myra squeezed his hand, a bittersweet smile forming. "And I carried my own question," she admitted. "Was I ever enough for you? Did I hurt you too much by leaving? Did I break us because I didn't trust in what we had?" The weight of the years seemed to press down on them, yet in the confession, a strange lightness began to seep in. They were no longer just two people haunted by the past. They were two people meeting the truth of their love, unvarnished and raw. Vivan's eyes searched hers. "I can't change the past, Myra. I can't undo the mistakes. But I can tell you this. The part of me that loved you then still loves you now. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not without fear, but with every bit of honesty I can muster." She blinked, tears slipping freely now, but her smile was warm, genuine. I feel the same, Vivan. I've tried to move on, to bury it, to ignore it, but I can't. And maybe we don't have to ignore it anymore. The emotional turning point. For a long moment they simply stood there, letting the silence speak. The air was thick with the ghosts of their past. The fights, the missed opportunities, the lonely nights. Yet now, each memory felt like a thread leading them back together rather than pulling them apart. Vivan took a cautious step closer. I don't know what comes next, he admitted. I don't know if we can pick up where we left off or if we need to build something entirely new. But I want to try. With patience, with honesty, with everything we've learned. Myra nodded, a shiver of hope passing through her. Yes, she said softly. Let's try. Not to erase the past, not to pretend it didn't happen, but to move forward. Together. Slowly if we have to. But together. The city around them faded into background noise. The street lamps, the distant traffic, the murmurs of life. All became a quiet stage for a reunion long overdue. For the first time in years, Vivan felt a spark of something he had thought lost forever. Hope. Signs of reconnection. In the following days and weeks, Vivan and Myra began rebuilding, cautiously but deliberately. They met in familiar cafes, revisited old haunts, and sometimes sat in comfortable silence. Every conversation was a small victory, every shared smile a step toward trust regained. They laughed at old jokes, remembered past adventures, and acknowledged their scars without shame. The pain they had carried for years became a shared memory rather than a wedge. Vivan noticed the subtle changes in Myra, the way she listened more deeply, the way she paused before speaking, the way she trusted him now in ways she hadn't before. Myra noticed changes in him, too. The quiet strength he had cultivated, the gentleness in his touch, the patience in his eyes. Each day, each moment reinforced the realization that love is not just a feeling. It is persistence, forgiveness, and courage. A hopeful horizon. One evening they walked along the edge of Marine Drive, the sea reflecting the fading sunset. Vivan stopped, taking her hand in his once again. Myra. I don't know what the future holds, he said, but I do know this. I want you in it. Not just as a memory, not just as a regret, but as someone I can grow with, someone I can love fully without holding back. She squeezed his hand, her eyes shimmering with the same fire that had first drawn him to her years ago. Vivan, I want that too. We'll take it slow, we'll be careful, but I believe we can make it. Together, for the first time in a long while, Vivan felt a lightness in his chest, not the reckless joy of first love, but a steady, enduring hope. The past had left scars, yes, but now those scars were part of a story that could continue, a story still unfolding. And in the quiet glow of the setting sun, with the waves lapping gently at their feet, it felt possible, finally, truly possible, that they might find a love that endured not because it was perfect, but because it was real. Was I ever enough? Part 4. Epilogue and reflection. Weeks turned into months. Vivan and Myra continued their tentative steps toward one another, each moment building trust, each conversation mending a part of the heart that had once been broken. Their connection was no longer the impulsive fire of youth, but a steady flame, glowing with patience, understanding, and the quiet joy of rediscovery. The city around them moved at its usual frenetic pace, yet they had found a rhythm of their own, a world of shared silences, laughter, and gentle touches that needed no words. Vivan often reflected on the journey that had brought them here. He remembered the countless nights he had spent questioning himself. Was I ever enough? Did she love me? Truly? And he realized that the question had always been less about Myra and more about himself. It was the human condition, he thought, to doubt, to fear, to wonder if we are ever worthy of love. But he had learned that worth was not something given, nor something measured by the actions of another. It was something nurtured within, strengthened by the courage to forgive, to grow, and to try again. The healing of scars. The scars of the past remained. They were visible in small ways: a hesitation before speaking, a glance that lingered too long, a fear of repeating old mistakes. Yet these scars were no longer wounds that festered. They were reminders of resilience, of love lost and regained, of the lessons learned in the quiet aftermath of heartbreak. Myra would sometimes rest her head against Vivan's shoulder and whisper, "I'm glad we didn't give up on us." And Vivan would smile, the weight of years lifting with every word. "Neither did I. We were patient. And maybe that's what love really is." They had learned that love was not just about passion or perfect timing. It was about choosing each other, day after day, despite the fears and doubts that lingered like shadows. A new beginning. One evening, they walked along Marine Drive, the waves reflecting the golden hue of the sunset. It was a place of memory, a place that had once held both joy and sorrow. But now it felt like a threshold, a bridge between what had been and what could be. Vivan stopped, taking Myra's hands in his. "I don't know what the future holds," he said softly, "but I do know that whatever comes, I want to face it with you." Myra's eyes glistened in the fading light. "And I want that too, Vivan. Not because the past was perfect, but because we've survived it. And now we can build something real for the first time." Their smiles were not tentative, nor their hearts hesitant. The past no longer held them captive. They walked forward together, the possibility of love stretching ahead like the horizon, infinite, unpredictable, and beautiful. Reflections on love and life. The story of Vivan and Myra is a reminder that love does not always follow a straight path. Some relationships leave scars, yes, but those scars are not failures. They are lessons, maps of the heart that guide us toward growth and understanding. Was I ever enough? The answer, they learned, was never simple. Sometimes we are enough. Sometimes we fall short. But love, in its truest form, is about forgiveness, patience, and the willingness to try again, even after heartbreak. Vivan and Myra's journey demonstrates that reconciliation is possible when two people are willing to face the past honestly, embrace the imperfections of the present, and step into the future together, however uncertain it may be. The last scene. The sun dipped below the horizon and the waves whispered against the shore. Vivan and Myra stood side by side, hands intertwined, hearts steady and open. "You know," Myra said softly, "I think we were always meant to find our way back to each other." Vivan smiled, a quiet, assured smile. "Yes, and now we can finally see what comes next." The city buzzed around them, but they were in a world of their own making. The past had shaped them, but it did not define them. The scars remained, but they were no longer barriers, only markers of a journey endured, a love rediscovered, and a future waiting to be written. And in that moment, the question that had haunted them for years finally found its peace. Yes, they were enough. And together, they just might be enough for the future too.